Hi, Rob Howard from EFL Talks, and we're here today with a brand new EFL talker. This is Lindy Ledohowski, and she's coming from Toronto. I believe you're in Toronto, right?
Yep.
Yep. Great. And I had the pleasure of meeting Lindy a while ago. We did something online first together for the virtual roundtable. And then the nice thing is we were both nominated for the British Council Elton Awards that were held this year, and we met in London. So I'll without further ado, Lindy will tell you a little bit about herself and tell you about her subject today. Take it away, Lindy.
Thanks very much, Rob. First, yes, I want to say thank you very much for having me as a first-time EFL talker. It is great to be here. It was wonderful to meet you in person in London at the lovely British Council Elton's Gala Award event, and now it is fantastic to be here as an EFL talker. So a little bit about me, and then I will jump into my subject matter, which is chunk or chunking. So me first, and then our topic. So I am Dr. Lindy Ledohowski. I have an English degree, an education degree focusing on English. I have a master's in English and a PhD in English and a postdoc in English. I was a high school English teacher, and then I was a university English professor. After all of that, I decided to develop software to help students with the writing tasks that they might face in English. So that's a little bit about me, and the software that I've developed is called Essay Jack. So you see that down in the bottom corner of our first slide. Without further ado, I am going to jump in and tell you a little bit about chunking. So what chunking is in a language context is something that's a little bit different from what we expect when we're just talking about a chunk of something, a chunk of ice, or a chunk of mud on the road. When we're talking about a chunk or chunking in a language context, we're talking about grouping bits of language together into larger units, and that can make for ease of comprehension as opposed to breaking down words or sentences into their individual words one at a time. So that's why we talk about chunk or chunking in a language context. So when we're dealing with a spoken context and we've got two people speaking in English or in any other language with each other, they are often automatically chunking parts of speech together. So commonly you might have a part of speech, something like, hey, hi, how are you? And instead of breaking that down into the individual components, so hey, hi, how are you, that whole piece of language gets chunked together into one unit. So we sort of say, hey, how are you? And it gets chunked together in our one bit of language. It makes it easier for us to remember and easier for us to be able to communicate in chunks as opposed to always thinking about the individual units in concert, one with the other. So we will chunk those groups of language together in a speaking and a listening context. But the other aspect of learning English and being able to function in English or any other language competently has to do with not just speaking and listening, but also writing. And so what I want to turn our attention to now is not just chunk or chunking in the speaking and listening context, but also how do we chunk language in writing? So often we'll be faced, and especially as I mentioned at the start, that my experience is in formal education. So in formal education, often that means that I make my students write things in English. So they must submit assignments, essay assignments, written assignments. And so that can be rather daunting if what you start off with is a blank page and you have to fill that blank page with words. And if you only think of those words as individual words, it can be incredibly intimidating to begin to put thoughts down on paper. So this is where chunking can come into play and be effective when it comes to writing. So as I mentioned at the beginning, after leaving my job as an English professor, I started software that helps students with writing essays. And so that software is called EssayJack. And EssayJack, this is a screenshot of it you can see right now of some of the main functionality. But what it does, in essence, is it breaks down written tasks into chunks. So what you see in the middle screen there is a chunk for one component part of a written assignment. So that in writing, we can also chunk pieces of writing into smaller component parts, so it's less intimidating and less daunting. And that, in essence, is our overview of how we think about chunk or chunking in a language context. And so just a reminder, we've got chunking in speaking and listening, so you group words together for ease of memory, ease of communication, and then that same principle can apply in a written context where you deal with particular chunks for a written assignment as opposed to starting off and going one by one, word by word, which can be overwhelming and daunting. So if you want more information about EssayJack and how it can help you or your students with written tasks in English, by all means, go to essayjack.com and check it out. If you want further information and you want to be in touch with me, you've got the email address in the bio. That's hello@essayjack.com. And you can also follow us on Twitter, which is @essayjack. Now I just want to say a final thank you for everybody who's watching. Thank you definitely to Rob and EFL Talks for having me come today. Thanks very much.
Okay, and
So I was super quick. Wasn't I super quick?
You were super fast. Let me see. Okay, my camera's not turning on for some reason, but can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, no problem. Yeah, and I mean, I can see you. You're frozen, but I can, you're frozen and smiling, so it's nice. Oh, now you're off.
Good. All right. Well, let me see. So, thanks. That was great and very short. Very nice. And yeah, I've seen your long demonstration of EssayJack inside.
Yeah.
But it's really is something innovative. And this is great because we've been talking a lot about this, that because we've been going so much with the communicative approach, we've gotten away from writing.
Yeah.
And students can't write anymore.
That's absolutely true. And I mean, obviously the speaking and listening part is extremely important, particularly in like a business English context. But the writing piece, students need to be able to write, and and they're obviously then going to be, forced into doing writing tasks, whether it's for IELTS or TOEFL or they find themselves in a formal education context. So yeah, totally agree.
Right. So it's a great tool. I really recommend that everybody take a look at it. And I wish you a lot of luck with it. And I'll be seeing you next year at the awards again.
Yeah, that is the plan.
Where we both win. Okay, great. And thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you soon somewhere in the globe.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks very much for having me, Rob. It was really a lot of fun.
Thanks for being here, Lindy.